Hey everyone, this is the Tripwire, part of the fantasy. Uh, I'm losing it. Part of the Triple Play Fantasy family. How's it going? I am Zach, your host at FF Chalupa Batman, and this is Alex at Alex Mateo 94. How's it going today, Alex?
Hey, not too bad. Lucky we were even able to get the two of us here after that long weekend.
Yeah, you and Joe are going hard this weekend. Um, I kept it responsible. So um, we're doing a little bit of a special episode tonight. So we've been going through our dynasty by ourselves by division, and we will continue to do that. We still have 3 divisions to go to finish that up. We'll get on that next week, and we also have a special guest next week that we will tease next week. So you have to tune in. But today we're talking Scott Fishbowl 12. So, for those of you who are listening who have no idea what we're talking about, we appreciate you watching and listening because you have no idea what we're talking about. So, we're going to tell you it is the biggest charity fantasy football tournament out there. Um, this year, if Scott maxes it out, we're looking at 3,000 people playing over 250 divisions. So, some of you are probably thinking, how is that even possible? It's all still 12-team divisions. So, it feels like a normal league until you get to the playoffs, which start week 12. And then it's based on your average scoring for the entire season per week. And then you just start cutting off the bottom 10%, bottom 10%, I think it's like bottom 30%, until we're down to the last handful of teams competing for the championship in the last week. So it's a lot of fun. So, Alex, how many times have you done the Scott Fish Bowl?
This is my second year in the fishbowl. Last year was my first year, and I made it into the second round of the playoffs. And then MFL froze on me as the 1 o'clock games were starting. So I ended up putting up like 30 points and ended up being part of that crop that got cut out. But I think I would have had a good chance of making a pretty deep run last year if my lineup set.
Fair enough. And we will talk about MFL, some tips and tricks at the end of this episode as well to help you with that for those of you who have never played on my fantasy league my fantasy league
Yep.
MFL before. So Scott Fishbowl, a lot of fun. One, there's still a few spots left. We're recording this on Tuesday night, July 5th. This will be coming out Thursday morning, July 7th. So by the time this comes out, there probably still will be a few spots trickling out because we start drafting the slow drafts on Monday, July 11th. So if you have not signed up yet, you cannot get in the Scott Fishbowl. So go to scottfishbowl.com and sign up. That is step number 1. Most likely, if you haven't signed up yet, you're probably not going to get in this year, but that's okay. Follow along, see what everyone's talking about, be part of the community, be a positive part of it, and there's a good chance you'll get in next year. So this will be my third year in the main event. I did the satellite league in Scott Fishbowl 9. So if you still want to be a part of Scott Fishbowl, you don't get into the main event, you can still sign up on scottfishbowl.com. And I believe there will be a satellite league again this year. And it's the exact same format, except for it's best ball. So you don't set a lineup. So it's still a lot of fun doing the draft. That's what everyone is most excited about. All right, so let's go through some scoring because that's what makes Scott Fishbowl so unique. Is Scott changes the scoring every year. This year's tweaked a little bit from last year, and his goal is to just kind of make it fun, make it balanced, and keep people on their toes. So I'm going to go through kind of the generic. So it's 12-team league. Basically, it is half point PPR, half point tight end premium, half point for first down, and then now we're going to go into some nuances of it. So interceptions for a quarterback are -4. And then there's a bonus for your completion percentage. So basically, if you have your quarterback at a 66.6% completion percentage or higher, you're going to get positive points from that. And if they are below that completion percentage, they're going to get some negative points from that. So you want an accurate quarterback. Let's see, rushing is standard and receiving is standard with half point PPR plus, like I said, the half point per first down at all positions. And then tight end premium, so half point extra for a first down and half point extra for a reception. There's also kicking in this, so it's 1 point for a made field goal plus the yardage is decimal scoring. So a 37-yard field goal is 3.7 points for yardage plus another point for making the kick. And then extra points are 1. There are no negatives for missing kicks. And then just a caveat, we'll get into the positions in a second of what your requirements are. Any questions so far, Alex, on that scoring?
No question so far. It is a little different than last year. Last year, I remember the penalties for missing the field goals, and I do like the bonus for the 66% completion. Shows you have to be more than just a good fantasy quarterback to be valuable as a quarterback in this.
Yeah, we had that bonus last year as well, but then there was also a negatives for sacks and an additional -2 on pick sixes.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some quarterbacks putting up some rough weeks last
Carson
year.
Wentz.
Yeah. So for position wise, it is a super flex league. So you have to start at least one quarterback. You can start a second one in your super flex spot. You have to start at least 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and then there's 4 flex spots. So you have 11 starters, plus the super flex, and then 11 bench. The caveat is if we are doing some live drafts this year, and they're going to be held on Sleeper instead of MFL. Sleeper does not have a flex position that can include a kicker, so you'll have 3 flex spots plus a kicker required as well. So that'll change up the kicker drafting strategy a little bit. There's no trading. There's waivers with blind bidding, $100 budget. And there's also a weekly game against the median this year, which just means if you score in the top 6 in your division, you get an extra win. If you even win your matchup, but you score below the top 6, you get a loss as well. You finish 1-1. So to make the playoffs this year, you need to have at least 13 wins out of a possible 22, and then after that, it goes based on scoring. All right. So my best strategy for Scott Fishbowl that I can share with you is to be flexible with your strategy. As Bruce Lee said it best, be water. So the scoring makes positions pretty balanced. So there will be so many different strategies being used in your draft. So I don't want you going to your draft with the mentality of like, I have to take this position at this spot because you don't know how your draft is going to go. So how do you feel about that, Alex?
I think that's pretty fair. There's no, oh, I'm gonna go 3 QBs to start, and this is gonna guarantee me a win, or oh, I'm gonna take 2 tight ends early because of their bonuses, or load up on running backs or receivers. Like you said, Scott does make the scoring much more balanced than any traditional leagues, so it does create that. Essentially, the way you said it, like just making everything worth a very similar value.
Yep. So you had mentioned something about running back usage. So can you share that piece of advice?
Yeah, so early on in the season, whatever running back is generally used the most, especially if they're like a free agent waiver type of guy, they're the ones that you want to spend your fab blind bidding dollars on. You can go back a few years ago when it was Philip Lindsay, 2 years ago when it was James Robinson, and this past year when it was Elijah Mitchell, who ended up being a player that rode you to the playoffs because you spent your fab on him week 1. So it is okay to blow that fab early, especially if it's on running backs who see a lot of opportunity and not the backup who breaks out one run for 50 yards and a touchdown. I'm talking you need to see at least like 15 carries, a few targets, just to show that you're going to be a focal point in the offense throughout the year.
No, that's great advice. And it is important to point out this is 12 teams, 22 draft picks. So your waiver wire is going to be pretty shallow. So like Alex said, if you see some of those guys that really seem to be like they could have opportunity, it's better just to strike while they aren't hot. If you miss, you miss. But you won't really get a ton of players that are really going to make season-long impacts off your waiver wire unless there's some kind of quarterback injury where the backup wasn't already drafted ahead of time, and then everyone's going to be clamoring for a quarterback.
Yeah, it's pretty much the only time where holding the fab could be beneficial.
Correct. And then you also talked about who to target at the end of drafts. So who are you looking at the end of your drafts?
Yeah, so at the end of drafts, I'm not worried about those fringe wide receivers. They can be replaced as a flex play easily with a kicker. Good kicker will put up between 10 and 11 points a game. That's what you want from your fringe wide receivers. So I'm loading up the back end of that roster with backup running backs who have a pass catching profile as well. So a guy like JD McKissick, then obviously your usual ones, the Alexander Madison, Tony Pollard, Kareem Hunt. But then you can also go deeper and take some of the rookies, the rookie running backs, Isaiah Spiller, Tyler Algier, those types of guys. And then you want to go with a quarterback who is a backup right now, but let's say the starter isn't the best. A prime option for that is Taylor Heineke. Last year, it was when Fitzpatrick was old. Unfortunately, he got hurt, which led to Heineke playing, but he can get in this year with Carson Wentz being bad. Who knows what's going on in Cleveland, so Jacoby Brissett's a must roster. And then either of the Seahawks quarterbacks, Drew Lock or Geno Smith. Seattle still has good weapons, so you can potentially get 13 to 15 a game from one of those guys.
Yep, absolutely. It's important to load up in depth as you go further into your draft. And how are you feeling about the pass catching running backs with this scoring?
With this scoring, I absolutely love it. You get the 0.5 for a reception, 0.5 for a touchdown. A running back, let's say you get a 12-yard catch for a first down. You get 1.2 for the actual yardage, another 0.5 for the catch itself, and then another 0.5 for a touchdown. That's sitting at
First down.
2.2.
Yeah.
So that 2.2 right there, that can go on top of everything that they do on the ground. So you want those backs who can make an impact in both as a rusher and as a receiver to really go ahead and steal you some weeks.
That's a great point. And then hopefully, as you got, if you're in the Scott Fish Bowl, as you're listening to this, you should have your division by now. Hopefully, your draft slot as well. I just got mine earlier this evening before we recorded, so I'm at the 106. But it's really important to get into those group chats if you're on Twitter or wherever your divisions are communicating. But it's fun, one, to just meet new people. That's kind of the whole point of Scott Fish Bowl, is to build those connections. But you also want to kind of talk strategy with your draft slot group chat, not with your division group chat, because you're drafting against them. But one of the things that gets talked about a lot with Scott Fish Bowl, because everyone's very excited, as they should be, is mock drafting. So it is important to get some mocks in there, especially if you're not used to the MFL platform, or if you're not used to the sleeper platform, or whatever platform you're going to be drafting from, to get comfortable with that. And then it's good to try out different strategies, but that's exactly why you don't want to get too attached to your mocks and the teams that you end up mocking, because everyone in your mock draft is going to be trying different strategies too. So once it comes time to the actual draft, when you're getting to the real deal, people are going to draft very differently than what they're doing in mocks, because they're just testing out different strategies. So they're a good way to figure out who you should be targeting late and when you should be targeting them. But I wouldn't get too caught up on, I keep mocking this specific player at this pick every time. Like, that's who I'm going after. Like, you don't know how the actual draft is going to go. And then I did want to give a shout out to fantasymocks.com. Is a great tool to do fast mocks where you're not actually drafting with anybody else. It's just using the ADP from everyone else doing those mocks to help kind of feed in an automatic draft for you, where you just pick your guys against basically a computer. But you can do it from your phone. You can do it from a computer, super fast. So that's fantasymocks.com, and it has the Scott Fish Bowl scoring in there to help out with that ADP.
Yeah, it's a very, very good tool.
Cool. And then when it comes to quarterbacks, some people think you can wait. Some people think you shouldn't wait. This is super flex. Trust me, quarterbacks are probably going to go the fastest in the beginning. It happens every time we've had the scoring similar to this. So I recommend in your first 2 picks, you get at least 1 quarterback. And then in your first 4 picks, at least 2. You can do more. Obviously, you can do less. But if you don't have one of those top quarterbacks, you're already going to be behind, because scoring is huge in this league. And like I said, quarterbacks are going to dry up real quick. I guarantee you most people are going to be carrying 4 to 5 quarterbacks on their roster, because it is super flex. There are bye weeks. you're going to need at least 3 to cover unless you don't want to start a quarterback one of those weeks. And you hope that none of your quarterbacks get injured. So very valuable as a position just because of the scarcity of how many you have to start and play.
No, I completely agree. And with, once again, the 0.5 bonus per rushing first down, that should also boost up some of the mobile quarterbacks. Obviously, Josh Allen can't get any higher than the 101. But guys like Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, those guys all should get a relative boost to where you would normally draft them just because of that extra bonus. Last year, Jalen Hurts led the league in first downs. He had 96 total first downs. That is going to be about 45 points, for a little more than 45. That can determine whether or not you get in the playoffs or not.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Lamar Jackson last year, he had a pretty rough year. I drafted him at my 106 last year. But one of his weeks, he had 60 points because he threw, I think, 4 touchdowns, but then also just went crazy on the ground. And that was without the first down bonuses. So those rushing quarterbacks can really make up for their deficiencies if they have a bad passing game. Whereas your passing quarterbacks, if they have a bad game, and you're done in Scott Fish Bowl scoring. I also wanted to point out that even though this is a redraft league, you really do need to treat it as a best ball league because it is basically a giant tournament. And yes, you want to win your matchups, and yes, you want to come out of your division to make the playoffs, but you don't need to win to make the playoffs. You just need to score a ton of points. So that's where you want to really focus on some upside players, especially as you get later on in the draft, because just playing it safe is maybe going to get you into the first round of the playoffs, but you won't go far. Now, the goal of Scott Fish Bowl is just to have fun, raise money for charity. That's the whole point of it. But if you're, again, we all want to try to win as well. So you really need to kind of push the envelope on, I guess, finding those stacks like you would in best ball, finding that upside. Because if you don't score enough points, it doesn't matter whether you make the playoffs or not. You're not going to get far because your points accumulate every week. So they're taking your weekly average, and if you don't have a high weekly average, you're already behind the 8 ball to try to advance to the next round.
No, you definitely want to, especially with the median scoring, like you said. Every single pick needs to be a calculated risk. You more likely than not just want to keep swinging for the fences because it's going to pay off. And if your guys go down, doesn't matter who you draft. If they get hurt, they get hurt. That happens in fantasy football, no matter what strategy you go. But if you're not swinging for the moon, like you said, you might make it to the playoffs, but even then, you're not going to make any real noise. And yes, it is about charity, which is obviously the most important. Make your donations to Fantasy Cares, make a real impact this offseason, but you also want to win.
Yep. And like you said, we're also, just to point out, we're drafting next week. And I'm drafting this weekend. So we're talking early July. Training camps aren't going out for another couple of weeks. There's always training camp injuries as much as we hate them. There's always preseason injuries as much as we hate them. Last year, there's plenty of people that drafted Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins on the same team. And they lost both of them in the preseason before we even got to start any games. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about kind of planning for that risk. Like you said, where there could be injuries. We don't want any injuries. We can't predict any injuries, but you really think about those backup guys that are one injury away from being a bona fide starter, or even maybe 2 injuries away from being a starter, or seeing that significant workload. Those are things you need to consider as you're drafting. And then I really want to talk about third round reversal. It won't take long to talk about, but I don't know how many people have played in a league like that. So Scott Fish Bowl 11 also had a third round reversal, and Scott's trying to make it more popular because his data shows that it makes it a little more fair, especially in a superflex league with a 12-team format. What a third round reversal is basically the third round mimics the second round. So your 101 has the first pick. They have the last pick of the second round. So that's a 212. They also have the last pick of the third round, the 312, and then it goes back to normal where they have the first pick of the fourth round. So your first round is normal, your second round is normal, and then your third round mimics your second round. Yep. So you want to think about that when you are drafting, where when I'm at the end of the second round, I don't get to pick right away again. I have to wait all throughout the whole third round again. So
You have to
something
wait
to think
another
about as
20
you're looking at
days.
your draft picks. It does make a difference. And again, the goal is just to kind of balance the value of all the picks out. So it's not a bad thing. It's just something you need to plan for.
No, absolutely, and definitely changes the strategy significantly if you're drafting early or at the end. If you're smack in the middle, that 105 to 107, your strategy doesn't really change at all. You have to wait
Correct.
maybe one or two additional picks at most.
Yeah, so I picked the 106 last year and got that for the very reason I had never done a third round reversal draft before, and I just wanted to play it safe where I'm right in the middle. So I'm always in the middle. I'm always drafting from the sixth pick or the seventh pick the entire draft.
Mhm.
Then I just found out tonight that I am also the 106 again this year. So again, I enjoy that ability to just kind of play it safe and hopefully avoid any positional runs because I'm right there in the middle.
Yeah, you'll be right in the middle of any of those runs.
Mm-hmm. And then I wanted to just we talked about it before, but again, if you're drafting on sleeper, you have to start one kicker. So you don't want to wait until the very or I would wait until the very end of the draft, like the last probably 4 or 5 rounds is when I'd be looking at it. And you can also utilize the waiver wire because kicker scoring can be so volatile from season to season. So even though the kicker scoring is very helpful, you don't know what kicker is going to be really good this year, no matter what you think. So Young Wei Koo was great 2 years ago. He was drafted way too high in Scott Fishbowl 11 last year because it was the first time we had a kickers. And I think he was around kicker 15, I think if I remember correctly. Like
Yeah.
he was not anywhere near that value that people were drafting him at. So I'm not saying that like Evan McPherson can't be great again this year, but we just don't know. There might even be some kicker battles that we don't even realize are going to happen during training camp, and some of these kickers might not even be their starter. So if you're in sleeper, you got to take a kicker, at least one probably, if not a couple. Or you can wait for the waiver wire. If you're not drafting on sleeper, it's MFL. You can have 4 flex spots. Again, you may want a couple kickers because they just kind of stabilize your team a little bit. If you're getting to the real depths of just you're scraping the barrel there at the end, but
Mhm.
just know that you don't really want to reach for a kicker, no matter what scoring, no matter what league
No.
you're in, because you just don't know who's going to be that top scoring kicker. So they are valuable, just don't overvalue them. And then I wanted to get into MFL a little bit. So that's the drafting platform that a lot of leagues are going to use. So we've been talking about Sleeper and MFL. So the live drafts, most of them are on Sleeper. A couple are on MFL. So I'm in the Orlando live draft. We have 2 Sleeper divisions and 1 MFL division. All the slow drafts, as far as I'm aware, are MFL. So that's the
Yeah.
majority of the 250-ish divisions we're doing. Some people have played on MFL a ton. Some have never seen it in their lives. So it is not the most user-friendly um, platform.
Interface, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not trying to bash it anyway because it's very flexible, which is why Scott uses it because it can handle so many different leagues on it. It can handle so many different scoring options. You basically can create whatever kind of league you want on it. But if you've never drafted from it before or used it before, it can be kind of intimidating. So I just want to give some quick tips. And there's still plenty of videos out there you can search on YouTube if you want to watch different screens and stuff like that. So basically, the first thing you want to do, in my opinion, is set up your notifications, specifically your mobile notifications. So at the top of your screen, there's a tab that says For Owners. Click on that. Then you're going to select Franchise Setup from the drop-down menu. Then you can add your email address. Do not change your franchise name. Scott makes this very clear. It's how he pulls the data from everyone to run these leagues. So don't touch your franchise name. Just add in your email address. Then you can select mobile, which is on that screen as well. Put in your phone number, follow the prompts. It'll have you put in your carrier company, and it'll have you activate your number through MFL. And then that way you can get notifications through your phone as well as your email. So it's really important. And then you go through all those preferences of what you want to be notified for, what you don't. I highly recommend you get notified for draft picks, or at least when you're on the clock, so you don't miss anything. Does that all make sense, Alex?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Last year was my first year using MFL for any leagues, and there was a little bit of a learning curve early on in the draft for sure.
Yep. And then the next one I want to talk about is your draft list. So if you go to For Owners tab, same tab we just talked about, and then there's a selection in the drop down menu that says My Draft List. So you go ahead and click that. This will allow you to import your personal Scott Fishbowl 12 rankings, or you can find someone else's rankings that you trust and import them. I highly recommend you import your own rankings or someone else's rankings, because the player rankings that you're going to see in your draft, if you don't update them, are not based on Scott Fishbowl scoring. So you're going to see some players higher up in the queue that you wouldn't plan on taking, and then you might miss some guys that you do want to take. So I highly recommend you go in there before your draft, update it, and that way you're looking at the best available players for this scoring format. So a lot of people don't do that. It makes it a lot easier for you, in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't know that was an option last year. Definitely a few picks, especially in like the rounds like 5 to 7 range, when I'm like, damn, he was still on the board. Can't believe I missed it.
Exactly. Now, you do have an 8-hour clock after the first round to draft. So you have plenty of time to make your picks,
Oh
but
yeah.
still, you get kind of nervous when you're on the clock, and then you realize you missed a guy because you didn't scroll far enough down, because for whatever reason, the default rankings had him buried in the list. So you also can set up pre-draft queues. It's not a requirement, but if you are setting them up, they're only one round at a time. So just because you make a list of 10 players, it's only going to give you a pre-draft for that specific round you're in. Now, there is a tab where you can just go to the next round, and you can even click a button that says to load your previous round queue, and that'll help make it easier for you to update and change from round to round. But just be aware that it only affects the one round that you're doing it for. It does not affect the entire draft. So a lot of people are like, oh, I set up my pre-draft. Why didn't it pick for me? Because you set it up for round 6, and then you made your pick in round 6, and it came up to round 7, and you didn't have it set up yet. So then you were back on the clock. And then the last thing I want to talk about for MFL is the app. So MFL itself is just a desktop. Now, technically, you can pull it up through your web browser on your phone, but that's all it is. There are 2 apps out there that are third-party apps. So they're not technically run by MFL, but you can still use them and link your MFL account. So there's MFL Mobile 2020. You search that in your Apple Store. That's only for Apple devices. And then there's MFL Platinum, which is good for Apple and Android. So MFL Mobile 2020 or MFL Platinum. They run very similarly. It's just kind of the interface looks a little different. It's, again, just they're 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. It's whatever you want to use, or depending on your carrier or your type of phone, what you can use. But you just log in with your MFL info. It'll sync up with your account, and then you can go from there. I used the app when I was running on MFL basically the entire time I was doing my draft, setting lineups, and doing waiver wire throughout the entire season. I just wasn't on my desktop very much, and I like the convenience of, oh, something happened, let me just get on my phone real quick and make an adjustment.
Yeah, the app was. I used the Platinum during the draft last year, and it did make things a whole lot easier, for sure.
Yep. Highly recommend the app. But again, you want to do all that setup that I talked about earlier on the desktop, and then that way it's way easier to use your app. So that's all the advice I have for Scott Fishbowl. Do you have anything else, Alex?
No, pretty much just go out there and have fun. That's the most important thing. Raising money for a great cause. It's all for fun. Network, meet some new people, make some friends, and just enjoy it.
Exactly. Be excited. This is exciting. Even if you're not part of it, be a part of it still in the community, where follow people that are on it, like their posts, interact with them. Maybe you learn some strategy right now to get you ready for next year. But like I said, like both of us have said, it's all about the charity. Have fun, be a positive impact in the community, and also make your picks. don't be that person that runs out the clock and auto drafts. But yeah, otherwise have fun. Thank you guys for listening to this special edition, if you will. We will be back next week on Thursdays per usual, with a special guest, and we will be breaking down the AFC South buys or sells for Dynasty. So until then, please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the Triple Play Fantasy channel. If you're listening on the podcast, make sure you're downloading. Leave us a review if you wouldn't mind, 5 stars preferably, but hey, we'll take whatever. If you are interested in giving us a review, we really appreciate it. Alex, have a great one. We'll see
You
you
too,
next
man.
week.
Always a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thanks for listening, guys. And hey, good luck in your Scott Fishbowl, because by the time we get on the next episode, the drafts will all have started except for a few live drafts. So good luck out there. Have fun and make some friends.